Welcome back to a special edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again are my co-hosts, Richie O'Leary and Alec Crouthamel. The white smoke is emanating from the Hale Center. And that means the Rutgers Scarlet Knights football team, after 64 painful, arduous days, finally have a defensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator certainly is an unexpected addition. If you've been following along this week, it's been a wild ride. We got our first break in kind of what's going on in the coordinator search in Nick Lazinski. Obviously, that didn't end up happening. But earlier today, we had heard from the, I think it's the NJFCA convention, that Greg Schiano had said that he's going to announce his DC hire today or tomorrow. It's going to be an outside-the-box hire. And that kind of sent everyone into a tizzy because Greg Schiano typically does not make outside the box hires. It's guys he's familiar with, guys who've had track records and blah, blah, blah. But the hire that he made today is Travis Johansen, the former now head coach of the South Dakota Coyotes, who are one of the top FCS programs in the country. I think they finished 9th in the country this past season in the FCS rankings. He was only a head coach there for 1 year, but he had spent a better part of a decade as the defensive coordinator and other different roles with the Coyotes out in South Dakota. But Richie, first off, we got to give you your flowers, man. You broke this story. You were the first one to have it. Talk a little bit about how this story came together and what Rutgers is getting in Travis Johansen.
Yeah, so just to be clear, he is technically not the DC yet. It's not in
everything's
writing.
Pointing to
from what I was told, it is not signed at all. But he is the top target. He plans on accepting it. I believe he's already accepted it verbally. It's just a matter of getting the paperwork. They actually have to do a more than likely, we don't know what his salary is, but more than likely it's going to be more than President Tate's salary, which requires a Board of Governors meeting. So that will probably be scheduled shortly. I don't know when. I think there actually is one coming up next week, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, on Wednesday.
So technically, I guess they could throw it in there, or they could just do the special meeting where they go on Zoom. They say, aye. All right, we're done. See you later. It's so stupid. But anyway, so technically not official yet, but more than likely going to be official. How this happened? Where do we begin? It was this morning. It was the NJFCA football coaches convention. I was joking around with you guys off the pod the other day, and I was like, I'm just going to buy a ticket and go. And I probably should have, looking back at it now. But we knew Schiano was a guest speaker there. He's a guest speaker there every year. He went there. He spoke. He talked about how Rutgers is going to make we're going to make a hire for a defensive coordinator very soon, probably in the next day or two. It's going to be an outside the box type of hire. What was the other wording he used? He basically made it seem like it's going to be he's definitely going to hire someone, and it's not going to be him, for the sole fact that he has just too many things to juggle, and it's just so important of a hire for him, and he needs to get this right. And after 64 days, I think we can confidently say it feels like on paper he got it right. Seems like a really good hire. Now, what does he bring to the table? In 2020, he's been with the Coyotes since 2019. This was his first year as the head coach of the program. They went 10-5, made the playoffs, I believe. I don't know how far they got. I think second round, if I recall looking at it. Very good defensive mind. He's had multiple defensive players of the year in his conference as a DC. In 2024, his last year as the DC, before taking over the head coaching role, he had a top 10 scoring defense and a top 20 rushing defense in FCS. Going up from the FCS to the Big Ten is a big jump, obviously, but everywhere he's gone, he's been very successful, whether it's Grandview, where he's the DC, whether it's South Dakota, which is one of the better programs in FCS. He produces. He's a big talent developer. They've gotten a ton of guys that have transferred up a level, not just this year, but specifically, but over the past couple years, NFL draft picks at South Dakota. The guy just knows what he's doing when it comes to defense, and I think this is just a huge hire for Rutgers. After 60 days, you couldn't have convinced me that this would have been the hire because I wasn't confident that they were going to get someone. And then it's just crazy because earlier in the week, they had a different name on their board, and it wasn't him and Nick Lazinski. And I don't know if we talked about it on the pod. I think we just talked about it.
No, we didn't. We didn't talk about Nick Lazinski, but I think we could. That could be a story for another pod for sure. Anybody who's on the boards definitely got an up to the minute update on that situation. And anybody who's also on the boards got this almost 2 hours ago. We got it. So
yeah, if you're not on the message boards by now, what are you doing? It's $1. Like, go
I'm
spend.
not sure what more convincing you need.
Yeah, really. Go spend $1. Go join the message boards. You're not going to find this type of insider scoop anywhere else because no one else had the scoop we had. We had the scoop on the other DC candidate. We had the scoop on this DC candidate. Not candidate, DC now. Just absolutely insane insider stuff we've been posting. And we posted a new recruiting prediction today, our first of the 2027 class. So looks like Rutgers could be adding a second commitment maybe sometime in the next couple months.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this player too, but we can talk about that another time for sure. Alec, what is your kind of blink test take on what Rutgers is getting in Travis Johansen?
Yeah, I mean, when we first heard about it, again, kind of a similar reaction where day 64 did not really think that, you were going to be able to make a hire that inspired as much confidence as this one. You're getting not only someone who has been a defensive coordinator for well over a decade now, granted at the lower levels, but still has coached some really good defenses over the years, but also is now a head coach for a year this year as well. And if you look back to when we talked with Greg Schiano about what he was looking for in his defensive coordinator, he said, he wanted someone who could be very similar to what Kirk Schrock is. His exact quote was, "What I have here in Kirk Schrock is exactly what I'd like to have on defense. I have a guy who leads the room, calls the plays, and really leads the players." And I feel like now that you have someone who has a year of head coaching experience under his belt, and then, like I said, that same experience as a defensive coordinator kind of sets up well for that. South Dakota did make it to the FCS quarterfinals as an 11 seed as well. So they ended up pulling an upset on Mercer, who was the 6th seed that they faced in the playoffs. They put the smackdown. They beat them 47-0 on the road in the 6 versus 11 game. So that's pretty impressive. They ended up losing to Montana in the quarterfinals. But yeah, I mean, this is a hire that definitely kind of came out of nowhere. Seems like there's at least some tangential connections as to how Greg Schiano got here. I believe Rutgers went after their star running back LJ Phillips at least a little bit out of the transfer portal, so that was potential connection. So yeah, this is a guy we didn't think when we talked on Tuesday when we went live. Then I don't think we thought they were going to be able to get someone of a caliber who is an experienced play caller and has done stuff, has a lot of track record as defense coordinator. But they did just that. And again, that head coaching experience, I feel like having that year as a head coach can only help you lead a unit. And it really helps Greg Schiano himself as well, where, maybe that, the instant trust isn't there instantly because he hasn't worked with the guy before. But this is someone who knows how to lead and who knows, Greg Schiano can kind of pass along some of the other duties onto him as to lead the defense because he's been a play caller for a long time and because he's been a head coach now as well.
Yeah, and you saw how important it was to have head coaching experience on staff with Joe Harris-Simiak and kind of what he lost when you had a guy like Rob Smith come in who was a step down as a play caller, hadn't had that kind of leadership of a side of the of the whole team. Dave Brock is a former head coach on the offensive side. I do think this will help be a pillar to the program for sure with that experience. Looking up some of like the defensive stats for South Dakota, I mean, they've had a pretty good defense now for the last 5-6 years. We'll have an article with all their defensive rankings year by year, but given that this is kind of like emerging news, I want to touch on some of the players too, because like you said, they've had a lot of guys go up a level this, not only this offseason, but the past few off seasons. They had three FCS All-Americans this past year. 2 of them have actually already left and went elsewhere. LJ Phillips, the first team All-American, ended up going to Iowa. He's the running back transfer. They also had a wide receiver, Lorenzo Fenner, who had 1,000 yards. He was a second team FCS All-American. He ended up at Cincinnati. The third All-American they had on their team is actually still with their program, and he's a cornerback. He actually led the FCS in interceptions this past year. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. His name is Mikey Mann. He's originally from Colorado. So I think there also is kind of the element of like, could he bring over anybody with him that Rutgers might be able to use. I know that, the roster already has kind of had some guys plucked over from it, like I already mentioned with those three, but they also had a defensive tackle end up at Iowa State in Caden Crawford. They had a safety end up at Boise State in Roman Tillman, and they had a right tackle in Jacob Arup end up at Cal. So there is that possibility, because anytime you go pluck a coach from another program, especially a head coach, their whole roster will have the ability to enter the portal, right, Rich? Given that they have a coaching change.
Yeah, so the rules are kind of weird and stupid, in my opinion. So when you lose a head coach, you're allowed to enter the portal, but you have to wait until they hire a new head coach. Once they hire that new head coach, you are allowed to enter the portal immediately. So technically, it's so late in the process that, like, in the college football world, that I wouldn't be shocked if they just promote it from within. In an ideal world, Rutgers takes their DC with them too, and just keep the whole defensive staff at this point, right? And I'm sure we'll see some South Dakota guys come over, and he might have connections elsewhere. Who knows? I mean, Rob Ulrich was his linebackers coach a couple of years ago. Like, crazy to say. Now he won't come over, obviously, but yeah. So they have to wait until a new head coach is officially hired before they can enter. But there is some names, like you mentioned. There's also an Iowa safety that just transferred in, Big Ten experience. Maybe not a ton of it, but he was a backup at Iowa. Big Ten experience nonetheless is key, and we know safety is yikes. So yeah, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I'm trying to look up some of his games last year, and there's a couple head scratchers there. 50+ points to Iowa State and 50+ points to North Dakota State is a little rough. But other than that, I mean, his defense was pretty good for the most part in conference. Now, Big Ten's a big jump, so we'll wait and see how that happens, how he transitions to that. But I do think on paper, for 60+ days, you can't really get much better of a hire.
Yeah, my money would probably be on they promote the offensive coordinator to head coach, since he's worked at a lot of different places like Grand Valley State, who's a D2 power. But yeah, that's the interesting part. There's a lot of Iowa connections both directions, between South Dakota, and honestly, you could say South Dakota State as well. Obviously, Mark Gronowski went there, but a couple of their position coaches came from Iowa as well. Eric Finney, their cornerbacks coach, was a graduate assistant, I believe, at Iowa a couple of years ago. Their defensive line coach, Nathan Nelson, was a walk-on at Iowa, and then I believe was a coach there for a little bit. Now, not really a high-ranking guy, but still was there as well. He was a graduate assistant at Iowa in 2022. So there's definitely some Big Ten connections there. Will he bring some of those guys along with him? I think you have to at least consider it. Even just having a little bit of Big Ten experience, I'm sure would really help. And yeah, kind of like what you mentioned, some of those players that have transferred out, like Mike was talking about earlier. It's going to be interesting to see once they do end up hiring a new coach, which guys leave. Be really interesting to see, because again, the South Dakota defense has developed a lot of really strong players in the FCS ranks. So we'll see if any of them come along. But yeah, I think like Richie said, I think for 64 days, I mean, this is probably about as good as you could have done.
425, right? I believe.
I haven't been able to watch them much, but I'm sure based on what we've heard from talking about with Greg Schiano, talking about it, I'm assuming there's some kind of synergy there. Like, at the very least, it seems like it might be. Now, Iowa also has that interesting system where it's like a 4-2-5. It's four. I called it a 4-2.5-5, where they have that nickel type role. They call it the cash position. I think that's Phil Parker thing. So maybe he runs a little bit of that. We'll have to do a little bit more research into South Dakota's defense to see what they run. But yeah,
I'm looking now. It looks like a 4-2-5, just based on the limited tape I'm looking at in this Montana game. That's the only game I could find online. The whole FCS quarterfinals actually full replay on YouTube, which is nice. FCS does that, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. But Travis Johansen, prior to being the head coach this past season at South Dakota, he had been a defensive coordinator for 14 straight seasons before that. And the guy graduated in 2007 from college. So I'm going to say he's roughly 40 years old. So to have been a defensive coordinator starting at 25 through his 20s, through his 30s, now he's a first-time head coach. A lot of experience calling plays there. Just looking at his last year as a defensive coordinator for South Dakota in 2024, his unit was 7th in scoring defense in the FCS. That's out of roughly 130 teams. They were 17th in total defense, so total yards allowed. Their team didn't have a ton of sacks. They had 50 sacks, but I'm going to look at their turnovers, and I know this is terrible podcasting. Would have loved to have all this put together before we started, but alas, we kind of just hopped on immediately. They were 10th in the FCS in turnovers forced as well, with 10. Oh, that's turnovers lost. All right, this is terrible. We'll get a whole article with their stats for you guys when we're done by the end of tonight. We'll have a full breakdown of kind of what we're getting as a coach. I know that there's an interview that he did recently as well, just kind of talking about college football in 2025. So that'll be a good listen. I haven't gotten around to listening to that yet because that's 40 minutes as well. But I do want to be able to go through some comments here. C. Brad says, "We fucking on the Rutgers bed tonight." Yes, we are. We have finally some good news. Bobby Takio says, "Let's go." Robert Miller says, "Oh, damn, this one was nearly on time." Nice. Yeah, I guess that's the start of the pod. Is what he's talking about.
This is interesting. It does look like a 3-3-5 set.
We only started 2 minutes late this time. That's how you know it's serious.
Yeah. It looks like a 3-3-5 set based on their opening game depth chart, because it lists a defensive end, two D tackles, a rover linebacker, like a slot linebacker, middle linebacker, a weak side linebacker. So,
Bobby, if you like this sweatshirt, I just dropped the link to it in the chat. It is a knockoff, but I do like it. True to size. It's a little thin and cheap feeling, but I do like it a lot.
Interestingly enough, his corners are very tall. There's 6'1", 6'3", 6'3", 6 foot, like all tall.
Yeah,
guys.
I can't wait for some of the Rutgers fan base to take a look at Mikey Mann, because he's white.
Oh, geez.
It could be our Cooper DeJean. Robert Miller asked, "Are we expecting to hire a bunch of the South Dakota defensive staff?" Rich, I'll let you take this one.
I would say that they would have a pretty good chance at a couple of them coming over. I don't know who's going to come over, who's specifically. Like, I do notice they don't have an outside linebackers coach or a defensive tackles coach, so that's a good sign. So, yeah. I would assume Charlie Noonan's safe, but I would still assume Cam Penny's safe. I mean, these guys were just offering kids as of an hour ago. I was just talking to a kid who just talked to Cam Penny. Like, I would say more than likely there'll be a couple of them. I don't know how many. There's going to be a lot of names that are going to be interested, I think, in these jobs, because Rutgers does pay pretty well for assistant coaches. They're one of the higher assistant coaching salary pools in the Big Ten, which is crazy to say considering Rutgers doesn't say that.
And I couldn't find his contract, but I was able to find the contract of his predecessor. So what South Dakota's former coach was making in 2024, he was making $340,000 as the head coach. So I would imagine he's probably making around $400,000 if I had to guess, and he's probably getting a significant bump to come over as the defensive coordinator here. I also think that maybe we don't land like a bunch of the defensive staff from South Dakota, but guys he's worked with. Speaking of which, the connection that we were able to find comes once again from the Ulrich tree. Mm-hmm. So Rob Ulrich, the candidate that Rutgers did show interest in very early on in the process prior to him getting hired by Nebraska, actually coached underneath Travis Johansen as his linebackers coach a few years ago. And then he moved on to become a defensive coordinator. And then obviously he's now at Nebraska. But we believe that is kind of where the connection is to the Rutgers staff. And obviously Rob Ulrich is Andy Ulrich's cousin, so on and so forth.
Just to be clear, NACO said he will be hired as the next defensive coordinator. So there you go. It's basically official.
Yeah. Tom B says, "Oof, certainly outside the box, but is a head coach from a program that's been pretty good if just the past 3 years." I mean, South Dakota is a very good FCS program. This past year, they made it to the quarterfinals of the FCS playoff. The last year, they made it to the semifinals. The year before that, they made it to the quarterfinals. So this is a regularly in the mix team, top 10 level kind of program in the FCS. So not just, little sisters of the poor. They're actually an FCS power, like the second tier of FCS programs. They're not North Dakota State, South Dakota State, but they are in that second tier. This is a good question, kind of one that we've been kicking around. Nick O8SO asks, "Is this?" Yeah, I know that hurt me saying it too. Is this a DC in name only or a real DC? Rich, I'll let you take this.
That's a real DC right there. I mean, he's been calling plays for God knows how long. Yep. I'd be shocked if he wasn't calling plays. I do find it interesting. Just going through some of his staff members, like a lot of them have gotten better gigs. Like Steve Ferentz, obviously related to Iowa, Kirk Ferentz. Yep. It's now with the Giants. He was his outside linebackers coach a couple years ago. Miles Taylor just left recently. I think he left after 24, went to Nebraska for a year, and then is now the Baltimore Ravens DB's coach with Jesse Minter. And I mean, he's had a lot of good assistant coaches over the years. Now, I don't think you're going to be able to pull those guys back out from the NFL, but I think if he's sending guys to the NFL and both players and coaches, I feel like that's a pretty good sign.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep scrolling through our comments here. Does this hire give us a chance at least for our offense to be good enough that our defense can win us close games? What do you guys think?
Hurt my head too.
Yeah, also hurt mine.
I think the offense will be pretty good next year. I think the defense needs to just be slightly better in order to win at least one more game. And I think six wins would probably be the bare minimum of what you want. Like that should be the goal. Get to a bowl game, get back to the postseason again, and then keep building it from there.
Yeah, I mean, the bar right now is the worst defense in terms of yards per play allowed this century in the Big Ten. So I guess the big picture is like, we haven't talked about the portal haul as much, but how is he going to be able to, how well is he going to be able to elevate the talent that they brought in and the talent that's currently being developed? I guess that's the big time question. How much is he going to be able to coach those guys up? And, he's coming from a lot of the same ranks that the defensive transfers are coming into as well. So yeah, that's going to be the biggest key is like, how can he utilize the talent that's on the field? They brought in a lot of guys. They brought in guys who have a lot of athleticism, a lot of speed as well. You think Bradley Jones is one of those main guys. So we'll see how that goes as he tries to, how he coaches them up. Yeah, and also looking back at his previous stop before South Dakota in Grandview in the NAIA ranks, they were really, they were really well regarded as a defense. I mean, according to his bio at South Dakota, he was even featured in a Sports Illustrated article back in 2016. I'll put that in the comments if you guys want to read that as well. But it even shows like NFL coaches like coming into Grandview State or Grandview and kind of giving him some trying to see what he's about, things like that. So this guy's been very well regarded among like inner coaching circles for a long time.
How about your, what do you call it? The 2002 or right? 2002 up and coming coaches or 2022 up and coming coaches that you found?
Yeah. So Matt Zenitz, who was with On3 and is now with now with CBS Sports 247. So he did a list of the rising stars assistant coaches all the way back in 2022 when Johansen was still the defensive coordinator of South Dakota. He was listed there. There were some other names, actually, some pretty interesting names listed as well. Let's see. I got to scroll back and find which ones I wrote down. So, yeah. Johansen was listed there. Tim Lukabu was listed there. Marquise Watson, Darnell Stapleton, and David Rowe, all Rutgers, at least adjacent guys, all listed there.
It's wild.
But yeah, if you want to check out that SI article, all the way back in 2018 when he was still in the NAIA ranks, I definitely recommend it. I just put it in the comments.
Ryan asked if we think this dude can elevate our defense. I think we were 7 floors below the foundation of the house last year. I think there's only one way to go, and it's up from here. And I do think this has the potential to be a multi-year hire. Like, I think your hope is that somebody, like, he does such a good job that somebody tries to hire him away from you next year. The hope what you're trying not to do is, have to let him go after 1 year. So I do think this is a good hire, better than I expected. And I do think that his wealth of experience as a play caller and also that additional head coaching experience will serve this unit well.
I'm going to say something. I don't think it could get worse.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah. So here's what I'm interested as well. Like, we know that the Dakotas, South Dakota State, North Dakota State, South Dakota of recent, North Dakota also of recent, have been some of the traditional powers in the FCS ranks. Obviously, it's going to be hard to, it's going to be different recruiting that area, but can Rutgers kind of get in that area? Because, we see a lot of, back and forth trading with Iowa. Maybe Rutgers can get involved in that area as well, with the teams and stuff like that. So I guess that's another interesting thing to look at. He's still very young. So, I mean, he could be here for a while. If he doesn't get another job, he could be here for a while as defensive coordinator. So I guess the big question is, can they kind of tap into some of those pipelines in the Dakotas where you have some of the best players in the FCS? Obviously, we saw LJ Phillips be a first-team All-American in the FCS ranks. So I guess the question would be, can you use that connection that he has being out in that area? How well can you tap into that and maybe take advantage of it?
We've had this question and a few other people ask it. I know we answered it already, but I want to also kind of talk about coaching networks you don't necessarily have had to have worked directly under somebody or have a relative on a staff. Like, there's coaching conventions all the time, and you bump into people, you run camps with certain teams and programs, and you might get close to people that way. Like, I know that, for example, like Villanova always would be at Rutgers camps. So naturally the coaches there will mingle and get close. So I don't think there's a direct connection outside of the Ulrich family on this hire.
No, there's other ways too. I was just talking to a college football head coach today, and he was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, I'm connected with so-and-so, and this guy, a DC from, I forget what program it was. I'm just going to throw one out. Just say South Dakota. It wasn't South Dakota, but and he was just like, honestly, I coached against their team, and the only reason we got connected is because after the game, he gave me hell with his offense. So I had to go talk to him and go get his number real quick. So I got his number, and now the two of them hang out every year and meet up for a specific sporting event. I'm not going to dox said person, but it's it's just wild. How little stuff like that happens. You just oh my God, dude, you just out coached the hell out of me. What's your number? I got to talk to you. We got to figure something out. I need to figure out how you did that.
Or it could be I don't know, you're watching tape on an opponent and you see how a certain team is attacking that opponent. You're like, wow, they are really working them here. And maybe you work out, maybe it's maybe Rutgers is preparing to play Iowa, and Iowa the first week of the year played, I don't know, Grand Valley State, and Grand Valley State was, punching above their weight, really doing things that were interesting. Maybe you reach out to that coach and say hey, what did you see on tape that made you try these things? And you always kind of want to leave the ability to kind of connect with people, because you never know, like in this situation, when you might end up working together, just with any profession, you want to keep as many bridges intact as possible, because you never know later in life when there'll be useful bridges to cross back over.
Yeah, 100%.
Ryan asked, based on this hire, what would you guys grade this offseason? Now,
that's a different question.
So this hire, taken in a vacuum, I think is better than I expected. I like this hire. I haven't dug into, South Dakota, tape. I haven't listened to any of his interviews, but just on paper, this is a good hire. To hire away a sitting FCS coach in the first week of February to come over and take over your defense is a good hire. What I don't get is why it took so long to get to this point. If you hire Travis Johansen in the middle of December rather than hire him in the beginning of February, all those top level guys who ended up leaving South Dakota, you might have a chance at. The majority of those guys that they're losing, they're all conference level players, are probably going to be starters in the Power 4 next year. The majority of them were on defense. So those would have been useful pieces to have. They already kind of fit into the system that he wants to run. They've already kind of mastered it. So just having those guys to kind of be almost on-field coaches as well is super helpful, because let's say they run a certain stunt on the defensive line and you get a defensive tackle. That guy can help when they're making mistakes. Maybe the coach is on the other side of the field talking to somebody, he could be like, no, when I have to take like 2 steps and then you cross over versus whatever. So to have those guys as like helpers on the field would be huge. So maybe they still can land a guy or two from South Dakota, but I just don't get the timeline of why it took so long to get to this guy.
Put it like this. I'm going to ask you guys this. What would you grade the hire? And then you can grade the offseason too, in general. Because this obviously changes the offseason grade, I feel like.
Sure.
Yeah. The hire I would give, I mean, this is without knowing much based off of, the information that we've been able to gather within the last couple of hours. I think we'll have a better view of it over the next few days, but I would give it a solid like B+ as of now. Someone who's like I said, who is a head coach, who has been a defense coordinator for a long time, and someone that has been looked at by NFL guys for their system and what they run, for it being well known. And then I would give the offseason. It's going to be tough to say because, again, a lot of these guys are coming from the lower levels in the transfer portal. There's so much unknown with this defense in terms of the roster, in terms of the assistant coaches as well. But I'll give it I think right now I'll give the offseason like a B- because they kept their top 2 guys on offense. They got a quarterback and have a legitimate quarterback competition that I feel like is a win-win no matter how it ends. No matter who wins, I feel like it's some sort of a win-win for Rutgers at least. So I'll give it a B- right now.
I will give the hire an A- just because taking a sitting head coach from the FCS who has an extensive background in defense and has been a part of a very successful program is a good hire. If this hire happened earlier in the process, I would have given it a slightly higher grade. In terms of the whole offseason, I think the portal haul is a bit underwhelming. I think they got worse on a personnel level in a lot of different areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give the portal haul a C-, the DC hire an A-, and we still have the majority of a coaching staff to fill as well. So we got to kind of, I think it's still a bit of an incomplete grade the whole offseason.
I agree with that. I'd probably say it's a B+ for the hire. In terms of the entire offseason, I previously had it as a C-, but that was more transfer portal haul. Mm-hmm. I think this probably elevates it to like, I'm between C and C+. Like I'm like somewhere in between that. I know there's not a letter grade obviously for that, but I do think it elevates the offseason as a whole. But again, like you just said, the personnel they're bringing in versus what they just had, it's a lot. I shouldn't say worse, but it looks worse on paper. Like I don't see an Eric O'Neill out there, and he was your best transfer by far last year. Do I think Malachi Davis could be decent? I do think he can be solid. I think Jaden Burnett could be solid, but he's really undersized. Rondo Porter's really undersized. I think he could be good. But the defense portal haul as a whole is just meh to me. And I feel like if you had this DC in place, it might have been a totally different haul too.
Yeah, very, very well could have been. I want to thank Mohit B825 for the $5 donation. And he asked, his resume is impressive and hope that continues with Rutgers. My question is, how does bringing him to Rutgers help recruiting? I mean, in the short term, I don't think it really helps recruiting. But if you put together a defense that is able to produce, I think that's always going to help recruiting because it's going to lead to more victories. And ultimately, that's what kids, other than money, want to be a part of, is a successful program. And I think if he continues to have success coaching defense, I think that'll do a lot of the talking. And plus, as you guys both know, like coordinators don't do a whole lot of in-person recruiting anyway.
It's all about coaching and development. That's it. But I mean, I don't think they're just going to say add like South Dakota kids, like South Dakota high school kids, like or I guess they have a lot of Nebraska kids on that recruitment class for 2025, and I don't think they're just going to all of a sudden start recruiting Nebraska. Might he have a connection to one or two? Sure, but for the most part, like I don't think it does really much for recruiting, other than the fact that you could be like, hey, look at this defense that he put together. This is going to be our defense.
Yeah, I was thinking of like, in terms of short-term portal stuff, and that's why I was going to bring up like these messages about the potential spring portal window, which doesn't exist anymore, obviously, but there is that window after the after South Dakota eventually hires a new coach that those guys can enter. Now, I guess my question would be is how would that work with enrolling in school? They'd probably be a summer enrollee, assuming that.
Yeah.
How would that work with the roster? Because I'm assuming the roster is mostly set right now in terms of the numbers. I guess how would that work? I'm just kind of, I know I'm just kind of throwing out a couple questions out there.
I don't like. I have the official scholarship chart or eligibility chart because it's not even a scholarship chart anymore because scholarships don't matter because you have 105 roster spots regardless. Now I think they're at, if I did the math correctly, they are at 122, potentially 123. We're waiting on a player to see if he gets his eligibility confirmed for an extra medical year. But in terms of the 123, there's also, I want to say 25 freshmen. So like there's space technically still. And they do this every year where they keep space open specifically for maybe not this situation, but like for like reclasses. Like we know kids always reclassify all the time. They just had a late addition in 26 in Cameron Stevenson's son, Ian Azalea Nagao Stevenson. Jeez, it's a hard one. So, I mean, technically they still have spots left. Will they just go out and add the entire South Dakota roster that's available and that's good? No. Will they add a couple of them? I could definitely see it. Like there's space, definitely.
And even looking like a little bit, not that far down the line, but like something like next year where you see a lot of like Iowa kids that go back, like we kind of talked about, go back and forth between South Dakota, whether it's South Dakota State, North Dakota State, something like that. He at least has that, reputation and has that, I guess reputation was the word I'm looking for, but he's done it at that level in that area. So maybe they can tap into those circles a little bit more. Like we saw Rutgers go after LJ Phillips in the portal, the running back. So I guess it kind of opens up a few more avenues that they can tap into, even if it's not, real emphasis.
Additionally, according to Chris Eisman, he made $300,000 this past year as the head coach at South Dakota.
Okay.
So feel free to continue adding questions to the chat. I will drop the link if anyone wants to join us on stage to talk the defensive coordinator. For those who are joining late, Rutgers seems like they've hired their defensive coordinator in former South Dakota head coach Travis Johansen, who was the head coach at South Dakota for the 2025 season. Prior to that, he was the defensive coordinator, amongst other titles, for the last roughly 10 years. So, not 10 years, since 2018. Rich, you look like you're about to say something.
No, I'm counting.
Okay.
One thing that I wanted to touch on, Mike, you go ahead first with the message.
Yeah, Stephen Lilla asked if it will be officially announced today. TBD. That
I don't think
the
the
official announcement's coming. Yeah,
because they need the Board of Governors approval probably. They're at 123 overall. There's 19 walk-ons, which are probably considered DSAs if I had to guess. I mean, I'd be shocked if they weren't. So that brings you to 104, potentially 105. Like I said, they're still waiting on one kid. So there's not a ton of space to work with.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to touch on, I haven't been able to do a full read of the Sports Illustrated article I was talking about earlier because obviously, we're podcasting, but just doing like a kind of a quick skim of it. It seems like a lot of what he was doing at Grandview was based in simplicity, and he called it positionless football, where, they kind of mix a lot of different personnel and things like that. Now that was like 7 years ago at the NAIA level. But I mean, he at least has those concepts that he's coached and done before. So will he bring some of them to Rutgers? I guess it remains to be seen. So that could be an interesting thing to look into as well. And again, if you want to read that article, I put it in the comments a little bit farther up so you can check that out. It's also in his bio on South Dakota's website. So you definitely check that out. I think it's a really cool look. At the very least, from what I've been able to gather just from skimming over it quickly, it's a pretty cool look into how he is as a coach and what his values are and concepts.
Kind of random, but this is a good question, Rich, for people who might not know. If they sign up for TKR, Do they also get access to the UNC site on the On3 network? This person apparently has family playing baseball down there, so they want to get access to that site too.
So yes, sort of. Like you get access to read their message board, read the premium articles. You can read everything on other sites, but whatever site you designate as your main site, that's the only one you can post on the message board for. If you want to post on, premium. If there's a free message board over there, which there might be, I don't really know. You can also post on their free message board. But in terms of premium content, you get to view everything, you get to check out everything, but whatever your main site is for your profile, that's the only one you can post on the premium message board. So like say your Rutgers, you can only post on the round table, but you can go view and read everything on UNC's version of their round table.
Rutgers Source 1 says Mikey Munn, remember the name. He is South Dakota's best DB and has eligibility left. Rutgers Source, we are well ahead of you. He has 2 years of eligibility left. He led the FCS in interceptions this past year, believe it or not. And he also did it all while looking like this. That does not look like a defensive back leading the FCS in interceptions by any means. Silent assassin there.
Love that.
Ooh, look at that. Signing up now. Love to see it. Thanks, Matt.
I would say tell us your username so we can keep an eye out for you, but you don't want people knowing anyone's username.
Yeah, DM us.
I think that's the best part about all this is that I don't have to deal with this every day, and I don't have to go like set my reminder to go post a GIF every day on Twitter
and hope that they will soothe the tensions, and it doesn't. By the way, I just checked on Inside Carolina. There is a free board, and there's also a free designated baseball board as well. So that's that should be an extra incentive
perk. Yeah.
What else do we got here, guys? We're gonna have more. Obviously, this is gonna be the last time we talk about the new defensive coordinator. We're gonna have more defensive staff hires that will happen in the next days and weeks. But any final thoughts on this defensive coordinator hire? What's your relief level at this point, given how the last 2+ months went?
I wish you guys had a camera on me when the tweet came out, because I was just like, you ever see the LeBron meme where he's like, can't believe this is my life. I'm like, yes, let's go. Finally. Yep. On top of it all, I love breaking news. That's just awesome. And having it a full hour before the guy who breaks everyone's news and Pete Thamel makes me feel even bit better. So we put in so much work, and it's not just me, it's you guys too. We've put in so much work. We've texted, called, and just got in contact with so many different agents and coaches and this and that, personnel people. And the fact that we were able to break it before anyone, it means a lot.
CZ asked, is this a done deal? Yes. It's not announced yet, but it's take it to the bank, as some like to say.
Yeah. It's not pen to paper yet, but it is essentially done. It's verbally agreed upon.
Richie, any assistants to keep an eye on yet? I know you're already wrist deep in some of these hot boards, but any assistants that immediately come to mind to keep an eye on? Yeah,
if you go to goyotes.com/football/coaches, I would just kind of look through that whole list right there. I'd be a little shocked if he doesn't end up bringing over a couple of guys. The one I keep eyeing up is his defensive coordinator, and Billy Kirch. Obviously knows his system. It would help. I believe he's a former linebackers guy, if I recall. He actually was at an NAIA school at Northwestern College in Iowa, where he was NAIA coordinator a few years ago. He's a really good coach. I think that's the one I'd keep the closest eye on. But specifically, there's just so many names now. I can go back, and I got to go do some research on his Grandview days, see if anyone there is significant or anyone there has moved up in the coaching world. Ideally, I wish it happened a year ago, and we didn't have to deal with the Rob Smith saga, because Miles Taylor was his DB coach / pass game coordinator. Miles Taylor is a up and coming defensive backs coach I mean, I shouldn't even say that anymore. It's pretty obvious now because now he's the Baltimore Ravens defensive backs coach. But he's someone that we heard about actually last year, which is interesting enough, as a potential Rutgers assistant coach, because Rutgers was looking at I forget the Iowa coach's name. What was the DC?
Seth Wallace.
Seth Wallace, co-DC there under Phil Parker. He was a candidate. He's been a candidate for, I shouldn't say candidate. He was a name that Rutgers reached out to and tried to get as defensive coordinator before Rob Smith. He was going to bring Miles Taylor over with him because they were very close working together and Iowa. And it sounds like he was a name for just about everyone's DC hot board this year. Crazy how things work. And it does suck not being able to get him, but there's a ton of dudes on that staff that have, like Alex said before, Iowa experience. I think the DB's coach has Cincinnati. He was coaching at Cincinnati for a year. He was at Iowa for a year. The D-line coach was at Iowa for a year. I mean, if you want to get anyone, you want guys with Iowa ties, right? Like, because Phil Parker might be, if not the best defensive coordinator in college football.
Yeah, to be specific, those three guys are ones I'm kind of keeping an eye on. Nathan Nelson, the defensive line coach, also played at Iowa. Eric Finney's the cornerbacks coach who was a quality control coach at Cincinnati last year. He has some lower level experience as well. Finney also played at Illinois. So that's kind of another Big Ten connection. And then Josh Manchagaya. I mean, that's how I read it off the website.
That's pretty damn good compared to what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, his bio thankfully has his pronunciation written out, but Manchagaya, he was a grad assistant last year at Iowa. He was also a quality control coach at South Dakota under Johansen as well before that. So, and he also played for him. So those are three guys I think in particular that I would keep an eye on as potential guys that could come over.
Going back to that DC real quick, he actually helped them win that Northwestern college that they were at in Iowa, won their first NAIA national title since '83. Really good linebacker guy. So, and he played linebacker in high school and college.
I also think Steve Ferentz, you got to watch out for.
He's already in NFL. He's gone. He's with the Houston Texans.
Oh, he's with the Texans. Okay, he was with the Giants last year, but he was the outside linebackers coach with South Dakota under.
Such a weird like trajectory for him because he was the Giants assistant O-line coach. Obviously, Ferentz, O-line ties. The other Brian Ferentz was offensive coordinator, O-line coach for a little bit with Iowa, and he was the Giants assistant O-line coach, but he was South Dakota's outside linebackers coach. Now he's the Houston Texans tight ends coach. So it's what a weird.
Where's the right Ferentz?
Yeah, Steve Ferentz.
All right.
Yeah, I don't get it unless there's a different Steve Ferentz out there, but I don't believe so.
No, I just know that there's a bunch of Ferentz kids that are coaches as well now. But
yeah, his profile. It is him because his profile has the South Dakota photo on the banner, but it also says New York Giants in the bio. But now he's also with the Houston Texans. So whatever.
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyway. Yeah,
that's James Ferentz is the Texans the Texans tight ends coach, not Steve Ferentz.
Maybe I messed that up then. I swore Steve Ferentz got the Texans job, but I could be wrong. I guess I'm wrong then. Yeah, you're right. Wow. All right, I'm an idiot. Maybe Steve Ferentz could be a name then. Yeah,
no, he was the assistant linebackers coach with the Dolphins in 22. I'll just pop it up because so he's been in the NFL a lot, but the middle part here, he was at South Dakota for 2 years, directly under.
Okay, maybe you're right.
Johansen.
I'm sorry, there's too many Ferentz.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. There's a lot of them. There's Brian Ferentz, there's James Ferentz, there's Steve Ferentz. I'm sure there's more, but never a bad thing to have a legendary head coach's son on your staff.
What else we got in the chat? I mean, sure, technically speaking, but like it's like done.
Yeah, it's you don't have people like Pete Thamel or
Pete
Nakos tweeting it out without some pretty locked in sourcing. Not that ours is bad, but
which one is the god awful OC? I don't know what that
means. You're talking
about Brian Ferentz.
Oh,
yeah. It only reinforces our reporting that the national guys are also on it.
Yeah. I'm so excited that this is over. It's been too long. Oh, geez, that was a long one, long road, 64 days.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's hope that these other hires are a little bit quicker. I'd imagine that he's probably got some guys, he's already talked to about joining him. You don't take a role like this without kind of some assurances or some discussions. So we might see a rapid succession of hires in the next few days.
I sent some texts out, and I got one back from a former assistant coach under him at South Dakota. He's not at South Dakota anymore. He's got a different job now. I'm just going to read out. It's like kind of in depth. Travis is an incredible coach and leader, one of the absolute best I've ever been around. Does a great job devising sound game plans and exploiting opponents' weaknesses. His scheme is very easy for the players to learn, but really difficult for opponents to game plan against. Very detailed teacher. Players love to play for him. Coaches love to work with him. Sounds complete opposite of someone. Very grateful for our time together at South Dakota. He gave me a lot of autonomy to teach and develop guys the way I wanted to. He did a good job of setting clear expectations for everyone and was result oriented. Made it really easy to do my job, get my guys to be the absolute best they could be. Fundamentally, Rutgers just got an elite ball coach.
Love it. That's what we needed. We needed an elite schemer and tactician, and I think that's what we got. The thing that excited me most about that quote, Rich, is that he exploits opponents' weaknesses, which means he game plans for an opponent rather than just tries to line up and do what they do, which is the most like Cro-Mag way to coach. And I love the autonomy element as well. Shows that he has trust in his guys and everyone's kind of results oriented. So if he puts trust in you and it doesn't work out, then you move on. But you kind of need to give coaches that autonomy and not breathe down their necks to make sure that they're doing well.
Yeah, and that kind of checks out with what Greg Schiano has been begging for, which is they need to make big plays on defense. They don't just need to get stops; they need to create big plays. That's something that Greg Schiano has been talking about for multiple years in a row now, and it just hadn't been, it hadn't happened at a high enough rate. But the exploiting weaknesses part, and also something that stuck out to me. I know I keep pointing back to this article, but this is probably the most in-depth thing that we have on the guy about what he teaches and things like that. That Sports Illustrated article I was talking about earlier, where a lot of his concepts in his playbook, it seems fairly simple to learn, but then they do a lot of different things out of it. So I'm really interested to see some of the stuff, some of the new wrinkles that he brings.
He said I can just say his name. It's Rob Schneider, his former defensive line coach. Not that Rob Schneider, different Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider was a defensive line coach in South Dakota.
Oh my goodness! I thought you were messing with us there, Rich. First,
no. Interestingly enough, Rob Schneider was at LSU prior to as a analyst for LSU from 2016 to 2018 before he went to South Dakota, and now I believe he's defensive line coach, run game coordinator at Nicholls State.
Okay,
so he was there in 24 though, or 23. I mean.
P. Poisset with the donation of the Rutgers year 1766. Appreciate you, bud. What a difference a day makes. Thank you for all the coverage leading up to this. Also, I may be alone in this, but I enjoyed the grade point average announcement. Not entirely sure what you're talking about here. If you're talking about the grading we gave, or
I think
it might have been the team announced their GPA, the academic stuff. They had a lot of dean's lists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the team announced it. The athletic department announced, I think, one of the highest ever in athletic department history for every athlete. I think it's easy when you don't have in-person.
I feel like that should be like an indicator of how down bad you are. Is like how if you're posting your team's grade point average. Like, I don't know if anyone's familiar. There's like this unofficial index of how bad a hurricane is based on the status of a Waffle House. Like if they're open or if they're delayed or if their hours are modified, like you can look it up. This is like, there's a Wikipedia page on this. It's like the Waffle House storm index or something like that. I feel like the down bad college index is, how many times you're referencing your team's GPA.
What about
the Pentagon Pizza Index?
Oh, yeah, that's the one. What about if you reference your team's GPA after a big loss in the middle of the season?
That's
at
like
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that's like a magnitude
hypothetical.
10. Yeah.
Total hypothetical.
Yeah,
that never happened.
Russell asks, apologies if they've already been discussed, but do you think he'll bring any players with him? If so, which players from his current roster are most likely? I mean, I hope he brings some players with him. I hope he brings the 2 or 3 best guys left on his roster. He's got a really high-level corner who we were talking about earlier, and Mikey Munn. I'm going to open up his team's page on my little app here and see who's still
Mikey
on their team.
Got to remember that.
What did you say?
Mikey Munn. I just got to remember the name. That's I want him for the sole fact that he's a cornerback.
Yeah, it's a fun name to say too.
He's Mikey Munn led the FCS, or tied for the lead in interceptions last year with 5. But let's take a look at who else they got. They had a pretty good quarterback who looks like he's out of eligibility. They have safety that's out of eligibility, linebacker out of eligibility. This guy, Chris Dixon, might be pretty decent. He's a Toronto, Canada kid. Look him up after this.
Massive.
Yeah, big guy, 6'2", 310.
So let's go based off of what we know they kind of want still. Is there a tight end anywhere?
Let's take a look.
I know it's weird because we're talking about a defensive coordinator, but he was the head coach too.
So it looks like their tight ends. They actually had a PA kid, but their starting tight end, this guy Zach Witt, has no eligibility left. But he had 18 catches for 164 yards and 3 touchdowns last year.
Looking at the rest of those PFF grades, I think we're good here.
Yeah.
But we know that they also would take another offensive lineman if it was the right fit. We know they would take a wide receiver only if it was a starter. Now, I don't know if they have a starting caliber receiver or not. We know they would take another defensive tackle. So that fits that one kid's profile. We were told they weren't going to take a safety this offseason, which I guess is still possible. But, I mean, if they have a good safety, I feel like you can't really turn that down, considering the safety room's kind of pretty bare and all was beat up last year. What else? Missing in something? Linebacker? No. Corner, they would get another corner too, and that's where Mikey Munn kind of comes into play. I think Mikey Munn, like, just based on the fact he led the FCS in interceptions, could be CB1, right? Like,
I'd be all for it. And like you said, they've got length. Thomas K asked if Caden Crawford has eligibility. He does, but he has already transferred to Kansas State. And I posted where some of their top guys ended up transferring from this past year. Their running back LJ Phillips landed at Iowa. Their wide receiver Lorenzo Fenner ended up at Cincy. Caden Crawford, who I just mentioned, Iowa State. Their star safety Roman Tillman ended up at Boise State, and their right tackle Jacob Arup ended up at Cal.
I think the biggest indicator
is at Cincy.
Yeah, I think the biggest indicator of if they bring in a bunch of guys from the program is if they bring in a bunch of assistant coaches from South Dakota. I think that would obviously up the likelihood that they bring in players as well. If you see a bunch of outside guys that weren't at South Dakota, I would say it's a little bit less likely, though not totally out of the question. But that's probably going to be the biggest indicator.
Yep. I guess we'll call it there. We will be back, I'm sure, soon with more to discuss on the coaching hires as we get more information on Travis Johansen as we talk to more people. But we hope you feel a little bit more informed, and we're all collectively a little bit further off from the ledge, I think, than we were yesterday or the day before. This is a good hire, and kudos to Greg for pulling off what I think we all thought not necessarily wasn't possible, but was unlikely given how long we waited and how last year went after we waited this long. So it does look like he learned a lesson of just not to settle for a guy and think like, oh, my system will, be able to withstand anybody as long as they are familiar enough with it, which was clearly proven to be false last year. So that's all we got. I want to thank everybody for donating. I want to thank our sponsor, FanDuel. I want to thank everybody who's liked the show, told a friend, who's joined us in this live stream at the end of the day on a Friday. But for me, Alec and Richie, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast, signing off.